Look at the tip of your finger. Now, imagine compressing your entire existence, your memories, your bones, and every single atom in your brain until nothing remains but a single mathematical point. To visualize this, picture the core of a hypermassive star, millions of times larger than our sun, collapsing under its own colossal gravity. Matter is crushed beyond recognition, forced into a single, blinding, infinitely dense singularity where space itself breaks down. Welcome to the zero dimension. Here, physics is not an ally. It is an insurmountable wall of absolute stillness. In this zero-dimensional state, you are not crushed by physical pressure, but by the complete destruction of geometry. You simply cease to possess the property of spatial extension. There is no space for your lungs to expand and no room for your neural synapses to fire. Time, which depends on the movement of particles, is frozen. Without a direction to travel, motion is mathematically impossible. You are an infinitely dense nothingness, an orphan particle of space. For us, three-dimensional beings, the idea of being trapped in a point with no size seems absurd. We feel secure in our vast reality of three spatial axes, moving freely through our daily lives. But this comfort is merely a biological lens, a sensory cage that limits our understanding of what lies beyond. To comprehend the fragility of this cage, we must take the first geometric step toward the abyss. What happens when this point of paralysis is forced to stretch? If we pull it along a single axis, we project a new reality. You have just entered the first dimension, the line. At first glance, it feels like liberation. Now, there is motion, and there is an axis of space to traverse. But the first dimension is one of the most claustrophobic and brutal scenarios that mathematical physics can conceive. Imagine that your consciousness and your physical body are now a line segment. You can move forward or you can move backward, and that is absolutely it. You cannot turn your head, because there is no left or right to turn to. The true horror of unidimensionality is revealed when you encounter another entity on that same straight line. In this space, there is no stepping aside, and there is no physics of side by side. You are condemned to a perpetual deadlock. You cannot bypass the obstacle, and you cannot leap over it. The other being is an absolute, eternal barrier in your single line of existence. Just 2 points colliding forever in the dark without the slightest chance of escape. Your line of sight is restricted to a single dead point in front of you. You will never see the face of the being blocking your path. You will only feel its geometric presence, stopping you from advancing for eternity. This linear confinement would exhaust human sanity in minutes. Yet it operates under a simple, predictable track. But what happens when we break this track? What if we add a second axis, allowing you to slide sideways and explore a flat, paper-thin world? Welcome to the second dimension, the plane. To visualize the second dimension, picture a microscopic slide. Imagine living organisms flattened and trapped between two microscopic sheets of glass, pressed so tightly together that they lose all thickness. They can only move forward, backward, left, or right along the smooth surface of the glass. For these flat inhabitants, reality is divided into north, south, east, and west. The idea of looking up or down is not only physically impossible, it is conceptually non-existent. Their minds do not possess the neural wiring necessary to formulate the concept of height. They are locked within the borders of their flat plane, entirely blind to the space hovering directly perpendicular to their world. If you, a three-dimensional observer, looked at a two-dimensional being from above, you would see everything they are. You would see their internal organs exposed on the plane, the contents of their stomach, and their most intimate biological structure. To them, all of this is locked away behind insurmountable walls of two-dimensional skin and bone. But to you, looking from above, there are no secrets. You can see every single cell of theirs simultaneously. And what if you decided to interact with this flat world? If you pushed a three-dimensional sphere through their two-dimensional plane, what would the inhabitant of the second dimension see? They would not see a sphere. They would see an inexplicable anomaly. They would see a tiny point suddenly appear on the ground out of nowhere. This point would rapidly expand, transforming into a curved line that grows, then shrinks, and suddenly vanishes without a trace. To the flat inhabitant, this would seem like magic, a direct violation of the laws of thermodynamics, a geometric ghost that breached the barriers of their space. They would never comprehend that the entire object was always there, but they were only capable of witnessing two-dimensional slices of its totality. This is our first major clue that we are blind. We look at the universe and believe we see reality in its final form. But just like the flat creature who only sees slices of a sphere, we may be seeing only the three-dimensional shadows of something far larger, lurking from an angle our biological eyes are incapable of focusing on. But when we ascend one step further, we return to the space we call home. Welcome to the third dimension. Here, the universe seems to finally make sense. We breathe a sigh of relief. Space gains volume. Gravity anchors us to solid ground, and we enjoy the comfort of height, width, and depth. We build concrete walls to isolate ourselves from the cold, manufacture armored steel safes to protect our assets, and trust our skin as a biological barrier that keeps our internal organs safe from the outside world. If a door is locked and the windows are shut, we believe nothing can enter. We assume our barriers are absolute. But this piece is fragile. What happens when we introduce a new coordinate? One that we cannot block with concrete or steel. What we call time is, in fact, the fourth dimension. And theoretical physics warns us that it is not just an abstract concept of duration, but a physical direction in the cosmos. In relativistic physics, space and time are fused into a single four-dimensional fabric. For us, who are trapped in our limited perception of three dimensions, time seems to flow. We feel that we exist only in the present, while the past has vanished and the future has not yet happened. But this is merely a limitation of our biological senses. If a four-dimensional observer looked at you right now, they would not see a human body in motion. Instead, they would see a continuous and chilling structure. They would see a massive, static sculpture stretching through the entire fabric of space-time, a sort of colossal organic centipede, stretched from the exact moment of your birth to the final second of your death. Consider a human subject under this cold scientific lens. To a three-dimensional observer, this biological vessel wakes up in the morning, walks to work, and returns home at night. But in the fourth dimension, this subject is not a moving creature. Its real shape is a continuous, frozen physical aberration. It is an immense, solid, tubular structure of flesh and bone that begins with a newborn crying in a crib in the year 1980, stretches through thousands of miles of roads and office rooms, and terminates as a cold corpse in a casket in the year 2045. Its childhood, its youth, its old age, and its decaying body are all present at the same time. Every step this human subject took, every word it spoke, and every breath it drew are fixed physical links in this monstrous static structure. It cannot alter this shape, it cannot cut the tube, and it cannot change its trajectory. It is permanently engraved into the static architecture of space-time. This realization is disturbing, but the practical implications are even more immediate. Think of your own body. You feel safe locked inside your room, with the doors and windows shut. You trust that physical walls and your skin keep your internal organs protected. But to a being inhabiting the fourth dimension, your three-dimensional protection is an illusion. Just as you can look at a two-dimensional drawing on a sheet of paper and see the inside of a closed circle from above, the four-dimensional observer sees us from a direction perpendicular to our physical reality, a direction you cannot point to with your finger, nor conceive in your mind. To this being, the concrete walls of your room do not exist as barriers. They are completely open. The vault door of the most secure bank on Earth is wide open. And the worst part, your skin offers no protection. The observer of the fourth dimension can look directly into the interior of your body. They see your heart beating, the flow of blood in your arteries, and the contents of your stomach as easily as you look at a flat image on a computer screen. Without breaking a single millimeter of your skin, without tearing any of your muscle cells, and without causing any pain, this being could reach its hyperdimensional hand from that invisible angle and touch the subject's heart directly, or extract a vital organ from its chest. The biological vessel would not see the hand enter. It would only feel a freezing, impossible presence materializing directly inside its own chest, altering its matter from a directional angle against which its biology has no defense. We are fully exposed before the geometry of the universe. But this physical vulnerability is only the beginning. What happens when we take this a step further and apply geometry not just to space and time, but to the very concept of choice? Enter the fifth dimension. We hold tightly to the concept of free will, believing that when we face a choice, our decisions actively shape our destiny. If the human subject chooses to study engineering, it follows one path. If it chooses medicine, it follows another. We view these choices as dynamic branches of possibilities. But the fifth dimension presents a very different geometry. This dimension is the physical space that houses all possible branches of our timeline. In advanced models of theoretical physics, such as Kaluza-Klein theory, these higher dimensions are not just mathematical abstractions. They are real directions in the fabric of the cosmos. If you could observe the five-dimensional hyperspace, you would not see a tree of choices being built in real time. You would see a series of massive parallel cables stretched through spacetime. One cable contains the timeline where the human subject chose engineering. Another parallel cable contains the line where it chose medicine. Every decision the subject could have made, every blink of its eyes, every discarded whisper, and every life it could have lived already exist as prefabricated physical structures arranged side by side. In the mathematics of Kaluza-Klein, these extra directions are curled up in loops so tiny that our macroscopic matter cannot interact directly with them in daily life. But in the hyperspace, these additional curves are pathways of physical transit. The subject does not create these paths with its choices. Its consciousness merely slides along tracks already laid down in the cosmic fabric before its birth. You are not the author of the story. You are merely a phonograph needle tracking an audio groove that has already been recorded. All responsibility and regret dissolve under this geometry. There are no right or wrong choices, for all possible alternatives are already drawn and populated by versions of you executing the action inevitably. Regret becomes a mathematical absurdity. Yet, as strange as this predetermined highway is, it still preserves a world we recognize, a world governed by gravity, chemistry, and human biology. But this is where things truly fall apart. Welcome to the sixth dimension. In the fifth dimension, your choices were fixed, but your body remained intact. You still possessed atoms, gravity, and a biological brain to process this reality. In the sixth dimension, however, even this basic physical structural integrity is lost. The sixth dimension houses not only the alternative timelines of our universe, but also all possible universes that began from different initial conditions in the Big Bang. Here, physics itself becomes a force of physical destruction. The human body is an extremely fragile machine, designed to function under absurdly strict local physical rules. We depend on the electromagnetic force that keeps electrons orbiting atomic nuclei and the strong nuclear force that maintains the cohesion of our molecules. If this biological vessel were dragged into the sixth dimension, the physical laws sustaining its structure would begin to fluctuate and fail. In a neighboring region of this terminal space, the electromagnetic force might be slightly weaker. Passing through this point, the attraction between the subject's electrons and protons would cease instantly. The chemical bonds keeping its cells together would disintegrate. The subject would not bleed or feel physical pain. Its body would instantly dissolve into an invisible mist of subatomic particles dispersed in the vacuum of a completely hostile physics. In other areas of the sixth dimension, gravity could behave repulsively or crushingly, destroying matter in fractions of a second. The human brain, a three-dimensional biological computer, would be unable to process geometries that fold upon themselves in 6 spatial axes. The attempt to register impossible directions and contradictory forces would trigger an immediate cognitive collapse, resulting in madness and brain death in milliseconds. In the sixth dimension, the concepts of self, sanity, and matter are completely dissolved. We are merely abstract data loose in the infinite. But as terrifying as this physical chaos is, the sixth dimension still implies a degree of variety, different laws ruling different universes. What happens when we reach the absolute boundary of mathematical space, where even this variety is stripped away? Welcome to the seventh dimension. Finally, we approach the extreme edge of theoretical physics, the seventh dimension. It represents the final architecture and the absolute peak of stasis. If the sixth dimension showed us parallel universes with distinct physical laws and constants, this absolute boundary takes the definitive step of unification. Within this terminal architecture, all Big Bangs, all cosmic expansions, and all final collapses of all possible realities are merely static coordinates on an infinite map. At this supreme level of reality, the very concept of existence loses any practical meaning. Here, there is no creation, there is no end, and most disturbing of all, there is no movement. Movement requires change and the passage of time, But on this final cosmic canvas, the picture is already painted from edge to edge, with no blank space whatsoever. We feel active because our consciousness operates like a microscopic parasite eternally fossilized at the center of an unbreakable crystal block. We perceive movement as we look outward through our tiny local slice, believing that change is happening. But this final static structure is the entire crystal block laid out before the void. Here, the very concept of thermodynamic entropy reaches its conceptual limit. The decay of stars, the silent evaporation of massive black holes, and the thermal freeze of universes are not slow processes of decay. All of this has already happened. In all coordinates of this supreme realm that support or prevent matter, the end is already drawn and consolidated. This dimension operates as an infinite dimensional Hilbert space, where every possible quantum state of every particle that has ever existed or will exist is mapped in its definitive mathematical position. There is no tomorrow to be shaped. We are merely microscopic, frozen coordinates in an immutable static structure. The universe does not hate us. It is merely indifferent to us on a mathematical scale so vast that the human mind is incapable of processing without collapsing. The absolute map is complete. There are no directions left to run, nor futures to invent. Our entire reality is merely a motionless point in an infinite crystal. This multi-dimensional physics reveals that our perceived safety is a temporary illusion, confined to a small geometric slice. Much like fish inside a glass aquarium, unaware of the observer standing outside the glass, we go about our lives blind to the higher dimensional forces that intersect our reality. Our concrete cities, our space exploration, and our biological privacy are open books to the hidden hyperspace. We are merely coordinates in an infinite silent crystal, floating over a mathematical abyss that operates far beyond our perception. If the very structure of space can be folded and observed from angles that violate our perception, then the safety we feel in our shelters is the greatest lie of our civilization. If you were presented with absolute mathematical proof that your entire life is a static line in an immutable block, watched by geometric observers from directions you cannot point to, how would you respond? Would you spend your remaining days fighting to preserve the illusion of free will? Or would you find peace in knowing the script is already written? Share your strategy in the comments below. While the silent stasis of the seventh dimension suggests we are locked in place, there are active, colossal forces in our own universe that are dragging us toward a tangible horizon. To see how this cosmic drift operates on a scale we can actually observe, click on the video appearing on your screen right now to explore the Great Attractor, the colossal anomaly dragging our galaxy and thousands of others toward an inexplicable gravitational abyss. Subscribe to Deep Space Signal to support our work, and let us continue decoding the universe together.